All right, let's begin by creating a new project. So up in the right-hand corner, let's click on New Project. And since we're going to be doing an 8-week project, let's change the project name to Game Development 2 just to signify our class. And let's go ahead and hit Create Project. All right, to ensure that we're looking at the same thing, go up to the right-hand corner and under Default here, change it to 2x3. And what we can start to do is save these off as weekly assignments. So I'm going to go to File and I'm going to do Save As. And in the Scenes folder here, I'm going to make this scene week 01. All right. What we're going to do in this particular lesson is we're just going to learn some basics on how to move a non-playable character around. So at the top here, go to Game Object, do 3D Object, and let's create a plane, and let's rename this plane Ground. And what would be helpful is if we had our non-playable character that we're going to use to move around our scene. So inside of here, you can right-click and you can go to 3D Object and select Cube and rename this player. I'm just showing you alternate ways to create 3D objects. Eventually, we're going to be creating everything using ProBuilder, but for now, what we're going to do is just sort of focus on just getting our character and our other things sort of moving around. And then eventually we'll build much prettier artwork. Let's go ahead and grab our game window and just dock it next to our scene view so we have a little bit more room here. And same thing here. I'm going to grab my project and drop it below my hierarchy. And then I'm going to change this to one column layout. And up at the top here, I'm going to change it to scene view. Let's go ahead and hit Control S or go up in the corner here and hit File and Save. Now the next thing I want to do is create a folder in my Assets folder here called Scripts. I'm going to right click on the Assets folder, go to Create and then Folder, and I'm going to rename this Scripts. Now within this folder, I'm going to create a non-playable character controller, and what this will do is we're just going to start off with something called a waypoint system, which will just move our character around our scene, or a non-playable character on the scene. So we're starting to think about artificial intelligence in variation to the games that we built before. So I'm going to right-click here, create a C# script, and I'm going to paste the move to waypoint here just because it's kind of a name that I'd like to keep it very simple, and you always want to make sure that your scripts are very descriptive. So you can see move to waypoint here showed up here and here, so that means it worked. If yours still says new behavior script, delete the script and reopen it. Now another student had brought up a potential issue that would arise whenever they press play, and that would sit with this reload script assemblies. With time, it would start to get more and more, the wait times would get longer and longer, which was getting kind of annoying. So let's take a look at Edit and then Project Settings, and then click on Editor here. And down at the bottom here, the best way to turn that off is you can see there's Reload Domain. You might think, oh, these are checked off, so it means it's not working. That's not necessarily true. You have to turn this on to indicate that you don't want it to do these Reload Domain and Reload Scene after every time you press play. So now when you press play, it should be a little bit quicker. All right, let's go ahead and select our player here. And actually, I don't want to name this player. I want to name this NPC, and that stands for non-playable character. Because later we'll have it not only follow a path, it could be just sort of a character that wanders around, but once it sees a player, we'll have it follow it. So maybe this is a puppy or, what it lets your imagination run wild. So anyway, here's our NPC. I'm going to grab this move to waypoint. I'm going to drop it here. And then I'm going to go ahead and double click this to open this up in Visual Studio. So as the script indicates, we want to move to waypoint. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the first line of code. And there's a whole bunch of videos before this one where we create a space shooter and a racing game and all this stuff. So if you're not necessarily comfortable with scripting at all, keep going and look these things up on your own, or go back and watch those videos. I also have a C# precursor video that would be very helpful. Regardless, here you can see that we have a public variable that can store the transform of a target waypoint. Now this name we created. and I added a comment there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and I'm going to save this. Now what I'm going to do is go back to Unity, and let's hook this up. All right, I'm going to select my NPC, and you can see that we have a slot now for a target waypoint. The issue is we don't have our first waypoint. So I'm going to right click in here, go to create empty, and I'm going to name this just waypoint. Now what happens is if we want more waypoints, I can go ahead and hit Control D here, and you can see it gives it a little 1 there. So this would be 0 and this would be 1. For now I'm going to have it just go to this first waypoint, which will be right in front of the character. Oops, this will be right in front of the character. And let's rotate a little bit and make sure that, actually what might be helpful is that we just reset its position. And then we just move that forward a little bit. And then we'll grab this second waypoint, reset its position. And then we'll place it maybe a little bit more out here. So we have waypoint 1 and 2. Now they're pretty hard to see. So if I select it and I turn on this, I click on this little like Unity symbol here, you can see I can make a specific icon. So let's say for waypoint 1, I want that to be gray, and then waypoint 2, we can go with blue. Or you can make them all blue. It doesn't necessarily matter. I think the gray might be a little bit hard for you guys to see, so I'll make that teal. It stands out a little bit better. All right, let's go back into the script and let's add some code so that the character walks right up to that first waypoint. By the way, with the NPC selected, we want to make sure that we drag in our first waypoint so that we're storing its transform in there. So let's go ahead and jump back into Visual Studio and finish the rest of the code. So the next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to make a float variable. And you probably noticed this from my other tutorials. And what this will do is this is the speed in which our non-playable character will walk between these. Later, I might create a run speed and have that be where it's just walking between waypoints, and then it'll switch to a run speed when it sees the character. But for now, just see that this is a move speed. I usually bring back the start function rather later, but just for the cleanliness of looking at our code, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit as well. I'm going to just leave it up to update, and we'll do everything in update. All right, so here's our next line of code. It says calculate the direction to the target waypoint. So what I have here is a vector 3, and I just called it dir, which is short for direction. And really, I should be teaching you the way I like to code things, which is I do like to write it all out. Now that direction is going to be equal to the target's position minus the position of the non-playable character. So whatever this script is attached to. All this does now is it stores that value every frame. It's constantly updating that subtraction. So what we have to do is we actually have to move the character towards the target waypoint. You can see IntelliSense is pretty good. It's picking up on what I want it to do, which is awesome. The problem is sometimes it'll actually give you a little bit more. Here, let's go ahead and hit Control X here. And as I start to, let's see if I can get it to, right? Yeah, notice it gives you a little bit more of a longer, detailed version of what you might want to do. So I think we're getting to a really great age in coding where we're getting a lot of help from IntelliSense and this other stuff, but the reality behind it is you still need to understand how this code works and how to use it. So let's go ahead and do our next line, which is moving the character towards the target waypoint. All right, so I'm going to add another comment here. And what I want to do here is if the distance to the waypoint is greater than really 0 here, but I give it a 0.1 value because sometimes it can be a little off when you're working in absolute zeros. We want to move towards it, right? So what that means is we are always checking if the distance between our character and whatever those waypoints are close enough. And if it's far away, it knows to go to the next one. So right now we're just working on one waypoint. All right, so here's the code. Now, if you recall from before, if you type if and you hit tab twice, it'll auto create that for you. Now, what we have here is if our direction.magnitude is greater than 0.15. So direction, remember, is this variable here that's storing the difference between the position, is greater than 0.15. And if you highlight over things, it says returns the length of this vector. So it's saying if the length between those 2 points is greater than 0.15, then we're going to move our character's position So what this, another way of writing this is, here, let's go ahead and rewrite this so you can see it an alternate way. So this line of code here is shorthand for this. If our current position, well, we're going to set our current position. That means the NPC's position equal to whatever our current position is plus the number that is always updating. So that updated number, remember this is every frame, it's subtracting these as it moves. We're setting its transform position. We're adding that to the direction that we're going in times move speed, which up here is 5. And then time.delta time is a way of using real world time, and it normalizes the speed. So actually, let me cut this for a second, and I'll save this, and I'll show you how it smooths out the speed. So let's go ahead and delete this line, I guess. Just wanted to make you aware that there is an alternate way of putting this all together. So let's go ahead and save this, and let's jump back into Unity and see this in action. All right, I'm going to go ahead and press play, and let's actually redock our game window down here. And then let's move our main camera. We'll reset its position. We'll make it a little higher, and maybe we'll rotate this off to the side here. Make this -90. And eventually we'll write a maybe like a camera move script for our main player. But when I press play, let's see what happens. Notice it moves pretty quickly. So let's actually take this down to maybe 1. Let's see how fast it goes. And you can see that it moved. Now, if we go back in, I'm going to save this. Let's go back in and add that time.delta time to see the difference. All right, so here we are. I'm going to go ahead and paste this. I'm going to hit Control S to save and pause it, and we'll return to Unity. All right, so back in Unity, let's press play. Notice that by adding that time.delta time, it normalized, it didn't make it snappy. It multiplied it by time, which made it a little bit closer to whatever the time is set by your CPU clock. So let's say we make this a 2. So I'm going to uncheck play here. And we move this waypoint out just a little bit further. And maybe I'll go ahead and expand. I'm going to hit R and just scale that up a little bit. And we'll move this waypoint out this way. Now when I press play, you can see it moves pretty good. Now let's actually move our waypoints maybe a little bit above ground because it's moving the center of this object here. So that's a little bit better. All right, so this will conclude the first tutorial. What we'll do in the next one is we'll take a look at having it go to multiple waypoints.